Hello, everybody. My name is Joel Berrocal. I like with the National Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to, welcome you to another entry in the NPR Chamber webinar series. This one's titled "Live Events 101: Tips and Tricks to Execute In-Person and Virtual Events" with our host today, Michael Collazo, who I will introduce in a second. First, I'd just like to just kind of talk about the chamber real quick, and then the show will be Michael's to take it from there with his presentation. We're going to try to keep the presentation as conversational as possible. So if you have any questions, put them in there's a Q&A section where you can ask your questions, and I'll read them live to Michael to be able to answer them as we go along with go along with the presentation. With respect to your time, we'll try to keep the presentation as close to an hour as possible. We'll try not to go over. And then, as always, all of our events will be available to our small business members in our archive. So if you're a member, just go to the Small Business Member Hub, and it'll be there along with all of our previous webinars and workshops and stuff like that. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss was if you haven't been following the chamber, we recently partnered up with a new magazine called Based, which was created to highlight the small business ecosystem in Puerto Rico and really be a place for it to be documented and archived, which is something we never had before. So we're really excited about that. And one of the things I wanted to let everybody know is that small business members of the NPR Chamber will be able to get a year's subscription of the magazine for free, no cost to them. So if you are currently a member, you just go into the Small Business Hub, and how to utilize the free year subscription will be there with details, stuff like that. So if you're not a member and you've been interested on the fence, visit our website. I'll share my contact info in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me with any questions. But we're really excited about it. Here's a copy of it. Just great content. So yeah, and again, with everything, we just have a lot of great stuff going on. So be sure to visit us on social media or visit our website, nprchamber.org, and learn more about everything we have to offer. So without further ado, I will go ahead and introduce our presenter and let him take it from here. So my good friend, Michael Collazo, he's one of the co-founders of Open Seat Direct, which is his brand new event platform. So he's just going to kind of go over the platform a bit, talk about how to best host live events, in-person stuff, and like I said, we'll have the Q&A session. So be sure to ask your questions in the Q&A, and I'll be able to read them to Michael to answer. So without further ado, Michael, the show's yours.
Thank you, Joel. Bienvenido mi gente. Hello, everybody in virtual form. I wanted to, first off, as Joel mentioned, definitely want to make this interactive as possible. I don't feel like doing the whole professor talk about stuff as much as I can, but I did want to give a little more background. So professionally, my background, and Open Seat Direct a little bit, and then we'll just go through from my experience of working in live events for pretty much 20 years at this point. What I've noticed being, working alongside the ops people and security people and the marketing people and the ticket sales people, just generally translating some of that basic stuff hopefully to the entrepreneur or the event creator to figure out how to navigate stuff. So professionally, I've been in sports entertainment ticket sales starting in 2003. So my background is I started in minor league baseball with the former New York Bears, formerly the Atlantic League, which is minor league baseball. I worked at Cleveland Cavaliers for a short time, as well as Prudential Center, which is a major arena in northern New Jersey. So in that, I was in ticket sales. So I like to think I got a general understanding of what, again, marketing people would do on different aspects of live events on that large scale and sometimes small scale. And just some of the tips and tricks I picked up in the sales part of it. And this past earlier this year, I started with two other partners, this company, Open Seat Direct, which is basically like an eBay for ticketing, where event creators could sell their tickets directly to their customers or fans without a middleman. The software is a pass-through that connects to a PayPal account, let's say, and the event creator gets paid immediately instead of not waiting till after the event or months later, whereas the customer or fan would buy tickets without fees as well. So that's generally what the company does. So particularly for those in the audience today that are entrepreneurs or involved with charity work or anything, live event from a dance recital to a major concert and everything in between. This is the type of platform that can help you in that respect. So I wanted to go through a quick events 101, super basic to kind of give folks a sense of if you're looking to do an event, large or small, live event or even virtually, sort of what to keep in mind for. So first is I wanted to cover I think the real basic is what do you want to accomplish with this event? Obviously there could be different motivations, so that you want to definitely sort of knock out. A second, which is we knew pretty well during the worst parts of the pandemic, we're still in it, but the worst parts of it was this growing sort of virtual event, virtual Zoom conversation kind of environment. And so we'll touch a little bit about that's super basic, but sort of what people use and what to keep in mind when you do that sort of thing like today. And then most importantly, then how are you going to market and sell tickets for this thing? So that's sort of what I wanted to generally super bullet point sort of way of looking at those aspects so that for any event you're looking to be involved with or organize, you can keep stuff in mind. So the first is what's the event? So it seems like an event creator of any size, again, from dance recital or maybe your nonprofit's charity event to a major concert. There's a few categories that might be more likely an event is for. So one is if it's for business, so obviously it's very much driven. I'm gonna spend the marketing budget and I need to rent a facility and do some marketing and sell some tickets. And obviously you're trying to make money in that regard. So obviously that's, you're looking to see what you're going to be working with a budget and try to profit from it and execute that. The second would be obviously the sexiest part, right? Is like, everyone has a deal or a father that back in the day they try to bring Gran Combo somewhere. So you have the obvious sort of business and music and entertainment, right? So that's, on the sort of that level, it could be someone's renting out a concert hall or they have a nightclub and they're executing on a larger scale over the course of days or weeks or years. And then third, it seems like a lot of it would be educational. There's a lot of live events increasingly that the goal is to inform someone maybe about a book they wrote or it's sort of a seminar or educational based programming. And in that case, it's either just offering a free ticket because maybe the goal is to acquire donations or to sell a book or to recruit people to invest in an educational seminar of some sort. So those tend to be a few ideas of how people are obviously utilizing events for different means, right? And then another aspect from sort of a base level standpoint is what's the objective? So to give you an example of like nonprofit organizations that might do like their gala fundraiser. So obviously if their goal is to raise money, there obviously has to be particularly sensitive costs, and if there's ways they could trade out certain aspects, or if there's, what is the food cost and what is the venue cost if we don't do it at our facility, all these things. So obviously with that, there's a certain objective that you would have. So one, obviously people are marketing a product and service. That would be an example. People do events for, real estate seminar because they want to sell you on, education, how to flip homes or something. That's obviously trying to sell a product or a service, of course. Then if it's selling an entertainment or night out, the objective is, okay, you're going to market that to a certain demo you think is going to enjoy that entertainment event. So, obviously an EDM DJ would be a different demographic than, a Gran Combo or somebody like that. So because of that, knowing obviously what market you're going to appeal to and what your ticket prices and all that would obviously impact that. Then third, as I mentioned, is like a networking business development. A lot of people will use platforms like when we started to execute their chamber event ticketing, their professional organization networking event ticketing, conferences, different things like that. So
Michael, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So aside from determining what your specific objective is for the event, like what are some other questions that people should be asking themselves, like when they're considering to start an event, besides the ultimate end goal objective? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So generally, I would say if you're looking to sort of invest in starting up an event, let's say if it's particularly a live event, you really have to get a sense of what your overhead is, I would say. So if you're doing a live event, let's say on a sort of just a networking event sort of level, then a lot of the focus needs to be just figuring it, obviously, and most people do this already, right? You're trying to figure out where the location is that would be most appealing or is the best deal for the organization, where people are going to come and park and, you know, attend this event. So if it's in person, location is obviously going to impact, in theory, what the cost is to either rent it, or they're letting you do the event there, and they're just sort of like you need a budget maybe for open bar or something of that nature. What's the parking like for people attending? So these are, I think, are some general basics for things like that. If it's more of a larger scale event where you're gonna, let's say from an entertainment standpoint, then that means not only the venue location and parking, but you're taking into account if there is a band, you know, how many people in this band, and is there a stage or not, and what's the audio visual components about, you know, for this band, the acoustics good, what is the cost, if you bring in a sound person, those type of aspects of it. And then I guess if, let's say you were doing a very large event where it's so big that you get to the point where even security might be a key component to figure out. So obviously, if you're doing thousands of people at a nightclub, you know, what's the security cost for this? Bouncer? Do you call the police department to give them a heads up? All these different, you know, aspects on a very large scale component. So I think those are examples of things just from a very basic level based on your size, where you're trying to figure out. And then from a marketing and sales standpoint, then you have that element, I think, to execute. Once you sort of settle those elements of, let's say, a live, you know, the location, you know, the time, you figured out what the parking and what the you know, the coordination at the door would be, whatever. Then you're trying to figure out, okay, how am I marketing, you know, this event, which I have a list here. So what's my budget? Am I strictly using social media? Am I using an email list that I have? How much would I spend on social media, if at all? You know, is it going to be worth me spending a little money to buy an ad or not? It might not be, or it might be. Am I going to do the whole old school? I make a fancy flyer and I give it out somewhere, and other ways of marketing that way. From a sales standpoint, it might be making phone calls, just like traditional cold call, or, you know, making getting a bunch of volunteers. Let's say in a gala networking setting, it's a gala fundraising setting, you might have volunteers just make a call about it. Hey, we're doing this event, we'd love for you to buy tickets to support XY charity. So again, based on the event, I think those are the elements. Once you have the baseline of location and cost and what your budgets are from a marketing standpoint, what have you, then you're trying to then figure out then what the marketing budget would be, what the ticket prices have to be to make some money on this. Once the baseline is there, I think those are examples of, then it springboards to knowing what to do with the rest of it, let's say.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess as I've talked a little about the marketing budget, just thinking of different things people do in addition to what I mentioned, social media, just emailing lists, making phone calls, but also I think increasingly some people may make deals with influencers. It's gotten to the extent of what the chamber does with the ambassador program. So are there people that their demographic is sort of symbiotic with yours from a live event standpoint? Or whatever product or service you have, it's sort of a synergy opportunity there. Is there something you could do to make a deal with them, where it's either a trade or an investment in their, you know, their IG likes, their IG followers, demographic, whatever it is, to, you know, market the event. And then, as I mentioned before, just obviously the budget is super important, needless to say. And also keep in mind, particularly if people are sensitive to it, sometimes trade can work. You know what I mean? Somebody can do something in exchange for something instead of the actual cash. So I think particularly if it's people that are budget sensitive, that's always something to consider if it can work out. You know what I mean? I think too, another component that impacts how you did the first part right is what the ticket prices are going to be, right? So obviously, if everything costs, whatever the budget is, you want to make sure the ticket price has a chance of, making money above what you paid, right, for everything else. So on some events, obviously, the goal is not necessarily to charge for the ticket. It's more you just want people to register, just as, maybe today, for instance, on the Zoom event, you just want them to register. So you want to keep it to account what type of platform you might use just to execute getting an email, let's say, for people to register. So there's various ways of doing that, obviously. So that's one part. If it's just a free event, you want to make sure you capture an email, needless to say, and hopefully maybe other things. You may want to try to capture a phone number to text them leading up to the event or not. You may want to capture even their social media handles, whatever you think is effective for what you're doing. I think, particularly in a nonprofit, like I said, standpoint, some people do donation or pay what you want, which I think would happen increasingly a little bit during the pandemic, but you'll see that sort of uniquely in a digital or virtual space where, the obvious example, DJs might just go on Instagram or Twitch, but then they just set up an environment where people can tip them. But for your event, if you're doing something virtually, that's something that people do, just offer the opportunity to, tip or to provide a little payment as a thank you for what you're doing. And then keep in mind with ticket prices, I'm not a hugest fan of just discounting at all costs. What you can look at it instead of just what would be the price people are sort of gonna, instead of looking at ticket pricing, like what are people going to, what are people willing to spend per se, that sometimes can be a process where you might devalue what you're doing a little bit, and then you don't assume you're just going to discount your way to the end of it. But trying to build value for the price per ticket you want to charge, you think would be, ideal to charge. So just making up a number, if it's like, yeah, for this event, I'd love the value to be like a $40 ticket, right? So work your way up, I think, is always more effective. Like if $40 is what would make this, lucrative and make this beneficial, what could I do to add value to that ticket? So it might be admission. In the live event world, there's a term called bundling. So could I include in the price of the ticket a t-shirt? Can I include in the price of the ticket a membership? Can I include in the price of the ticket something else that, gets people to the number you want them to, or to just add value so that people feel like obviously the ticket, has a lot of good value to it, or more willing to spend the number you want. So that's just a way, again, you can sort of add an opportunity to sort of use some assets you already have to kind of like execute some revenue that way. And then increasing again during the pandemic, there was this virtual events that we all were sort of like resigned to taking part in instead of going in person. So keep in mind that as the pandemic slows down a little bit, that might be less frequent than we experienced last year, but some people might consider doing a hybrid offer with a live event. So people go in person, but maybe you have like a virtual version of it, or you record it somehow, and then people can pay $1 or $2 to watch after the fact. Again, just ideas. You would have to think what sort of works.
Sorry, Mike, you had mentioned hybrid events. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit? I know you had mentioned kind of intrigued by the concept, but can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, no doubt. So you think about how digitally the world is international now. The internet makes, the world a smaller place. So I'll just give you sort of a live entertainment music example. If somebody is renting out a concert venue somewhere and they're getting a band, popular artist, and they made a deal with the promoter where there is going to be obviously normal, you pay $50 to get into the nightclub for this sort of thing. But if you felt like if I invested in basically like a video live shooting production for it, would that make sense to then charge a $5 virtual ticket, where you might feel like, hey, this thing is going to sell out. I'm going to sell out all 1,000 seats for this, or 1,000 entrants for this. But as it sells out, I could offer before or afterwards, I could offer a $5 virtual ticket where someone just logs in online, and there's a process where people would get a link where they could stream it. Some people have done it even on a small level where again, a good example would be like a dance recital. So let's say your kid is involved with a dance recital, you own a dance studio. Pretty much the families are going to sell out the actual theater, but there'll be family that'd like to go support it, check it out live or in recording. You could then offer maybe a couple dollars, and hey, we're going to record it so we can just send it to you after the fact, and you pay the virtual ticket, or you pay that ticket where you're going to get a live stream, an hour before the performance, you can watch it at home. So that would be an example of what we saw in the pandemic, out of the pandemics, the world of live events. People are doing that a little bit more and more each day, if it made sense for their bottom line, of course. It's a good question. I think too, and the professionals, the people that do it all the time, they're trying to figure out themselves what would make sense to do both, if at all, moving forward. This is just more details on virtual events, period. Again, this was heavy during the pandemic and is still around. We're all doing virtual events like the Zoom conversation. How are you going to stream it, right? So some people, if you're a fan of Fat Joe, right, he just does an interview on IG and people jump on it, and his value is just marketing, himself and providing an opportunity to have a cool conversation with people in that sense. So he's not necessarily charging for the virtual, right? People use YouTube, Twitch. There's functions in these platforms where you can provide a private link. Some are just public only. So these are things you might want to sort of investigate. And then there's platforms like the one we're on today, Zoom, there's StreamYard, there's people just use Google Meeting if it's just sort of like a professional component. So there's a million of them. So I think people would have to investigate what they think is best for their specific event. And there's even platforms that only do it for sort of music entertainment. So if you're doing some sort of stream like this or others, definitely want to shop around a little bit what platform you think would match up best for the event you're trying to execute online. So that was sort of a little breakdown of that regard. I didn't know if there were other questions, but that just sort of gives you a little basis of what kind of events, sort of a one-on-one of what to keep in mind when you're organizing an event. One thing I would say is, from my experience, there's never anything wrong with planning way ahead of time. One thing I've noticed, certainly with folks that maybe don't do it professionally, or it's a first time around for them trying to figure out how to execute an event, is there's nothing wrong with giving yourself as much time as possible from a sales standpoint. To give you an example from, I guess my background, I used to work pro boxing events, and for a lot of those, just how, they're organized as per fighting for a certain vacant belt, and just how that process ends. They tend to only give themselves usually like 6 weeks. Some of these bouts for boxing fans, they only give themselves like 6-8 weeks to sell tickets for something. And then, but obviously the big events, the pay-per-views, they're giving themselves 6-8 months to sell for, let's say, a Cinco de Mayo fight, or, we got to go to a Madison Square Garden every June, years and years. They're giving themselves time to sell a sales cycle so that they give themselves. So there's never anything wrong to say, you know what, we're not quite ready to do it now, but if I'm in 2021, maybe we should aim for spring of 2022 and give ourselves time to figure all this out, shop around for venues, or even get it scheduled as early as you can, settling that and just give yourself time. So there's never anything wrong with that. I think people may feel like sometimes they have to rush into it, or they're kind of putting it together a little bit last minute or what have you. But there's never anything wrong with giving yourself as much time as possible, because then you have time to sell it. It sits there for a while. You can adjust as you get closer to it. You can adjust pricing. You can do all these different things as you get close to it. So it's just one thing I've noticed.
I know in our experience, like I'm always torn between like what's the perfect amount of time to start promoting. Like sometimes you don't want to have too much time, where some of the people who were initially interested kind of lose interest because you just promoted it too much over too long a period, and obviously you don't want to have too short a time. So I'm always kind of torn, and I find usually a good month, 3 weeks tends for our type of stuff tends to be a good sweet spot. So it's worth
absolutely. No, absolutely. And then every type of event is different, right? So some are going to make sense to be quicker, 3 months, 4 months, 6 weeks. And then some, like, let's say, again, maybe a larger event where there's just a lot of moving parts, it might make sense. You're going to need committees and need, invest in marketing and ops and security. I mean, that level that you're talking about, I might need 6 months, a year and a half in some cases. Some events is that all of us know in the professional space, they might do deposits for the conference next year. I mean, they're essentially playing, in those cases, they're planning year round. And then in some cases, it just makes sense. 4 or 5 weeks later, because we're doing it once a month or what have you. Then, as you know, there's people that do a volume of events. If you teach yoga in a certain way, you're essentially doing an event like once a week, every Friday at a certain time, right? And then I think there's days of a week that obviously translate better to certain types of events. The obvious thing is, a nightclub tends to be busier on Friday night and on Saturday night, right? Mm-hmm. Professional events, the general thinking is like a weeknight after work, not Friday night, because people have to go on their families or they're going vacation, hanging out. But Wednesday night might be workable. Thursday might be workable. So there's always like days a week that generally people feel like is better than not. Monday's tougher, right? Monday's tougher to do some Monday night as opposed to Wednesday, Thursday night in that regard. So that's always something certainly to keep the case, but it depends on the demographic you have, right? So that's something I think to keep in mind, needless to say.
Yeah, and I was intrigued by the concept of hybrid events. I just find that in our over the past year or two, obviously at the height of the pandemic, it was strictly virtual, but now we're starting to get to a point where, do we go back to in-person stuff? How do we navigate those waters? So we're still trying to figure that out ourselves. So the concept of maybe doing a mix for maybe people, maybe have an option where people aren't super comfortable with large groups and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting. So that's something, who knows, maybe we can look to implement in the future, but good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, people, it all depends on what the event is, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah.
If it's a sporting event, once it's not live anymore, it's not the same. Like even if it were like youth sports, I want to see my nephew do something. He's on a basketball team. Mm-hmm. So obviously, it's cooler when it's live. You can see a recording, but you're just going to zip through when he shoots the 15-footers and all that. But something that's more educational, like today, for instance, as your members, if they think of it, I could use that a month later. I didn't go live, but I am doing something. I'll just click through here real quick and look through it. That's something that the shelf life is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is an educational, right? So again, the event's going to, I think, dictate what's some value there. And honestly, some of it's going to be tough to execute in terms of like, you really have to have an event where there's a live in-person element that makes sense. And then there is enough demand, let's say, for someone that might stream it after the fact or see it live or whatever. And then you have to execute that, right? You'd hate for someone to pay a few bucks to sit at home and the stream is bad, it doesn't work, it's choppy, they never saw it. So there is a lot of sort of things to consider to execute, but it's certainly something that increasingly people that do it for a living, they're looking into to see if it makes sense for their business, essentially.
Yeah. So you guys, so the OpenSea recently came on the chamber as small business members. So Michael, can you speak to what types of benefits our members would get for working with you and utilizing your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So our event management ticketing platform is a subscription-based model. So people can do a month-to-month payment where, depending on that window, they can pay month-to-month, and it helps you sell tickets and do the analytics for your sales and all that. Or you do a yearly support, 12-month subscription, let's say, where you just pay a flat fee for the whole year, let's say. And in both cases, there is a discount code where members will get $20 off, either first 6 weeks free in the case of the month-to-month, or $20 off the yearly subscription. And all of the aspects I've been mentioning in terms of selling tickets, either virtual as well as in person, and different price levels, the software can execute all of that for you. In that people would, let's say they have an event, it's a $20 ticket to go to some networking event. You're able to do it yourself, where you go into the platform, fill out the event form where it'll go live, and people can pay for their tickets online, either via credit card or via their PayPal account. They would get a PDF in their email, just as they would if they bought any sort of really fancy concert out there. Same idea. And even be able to execute just a distribution of a virtual event. So you're just doing a free event, you just want someone's email, you can set up an event where they just put in their name and their email. Once they complete that, they didn't buy anything per se, but they're going to get an email automatically of, let's say, the Zoom link you use for, the free virtual event or something like that. So those are examples of what the platform can help you execute, and members of the chamber would get a discount for either the monthly or the yearly subscription.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, if you are a member, you can just go into the member directory and look for Open Seat Direct, and you can see all the details there to how to utilize that benefit. So yeah, Michael, did you have anything else you wanted to add? Looks like we had a shy crowd today. Have too much
Okay, yeah.
But
Well, I would say,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just that. So once this is over, this will be, again, this webinar will be available in our video archive along with all our old stuff, and it'll get sent out to everybody so you can go back and look at it. And if you have any questions about OpenSeat, feel free to reach out to Michael directly. If you need me to connect you, my email's in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to do so. So yeah, Michael, go ahead. If you had any last thoughts.
No, I was gonna say, you mentioned some of it. A couple of things. One is that I'm definitely available via email if anyone wanted to reach out after the fact, and really anything mundane, nothing to do with our software, but just, hey, Collazo, you seem to have worked a million live events. Can I just ask you something? Just free advice. So the email for me would be michaelc@openseatdirect.com. I'm also super active on Twitter, as people probably know. My personal Twitter is mcollazo215. So even that, you could reach out to me in that form, and I'm more than happy to, when I get a shot, to sort of give me my feedback on it. So yeah, for us, this was certainly just a super basic beginning point as per live events, but we do encourage everyone to continue the discussion after this is over. Check out the recording, and any questions beyond that, feel free to reach out to me. We're excited. Our subscriber base grows every day. If you go to the website now, there's live events from different parts of the US. I'd love to have people in PR use it. So you can see examples of what people are doing to utilize the software. And, we're definitely ready to help folks pretty much on any level of event they're looking to execute. So, would love to talk more if anyone has a need or has questions.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited to have you on board as a member. I say, be on the lookout for future workshops, future things we'll collaborate with. There's a lot of good that we'll be able to provide for our members. So if you want to learn more about OpenSeat, you can go straight to our website, nprchamber.org. Reach out to Michael directly. Reach out to me. And yeah, again, thanks, Michael, for the great presentation, for giving us that info, and we look forward to learning more about OpenSeat moving forward. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, Michael. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close it out. Thanks again, everybody who joined us. Have a great day. Take it easy, guys.